The Galactic Confederation had a problem. For 3 of their standard years, the orbital shipyards above the forge world of Xylos had been a war zone. The enemy was not another spacefaring empire, but a relentless organic swarm known as the Grell. They were a tide of chitin and acid, launched from a massive, pulsating mothership that hung in the void like a diseased moon. The Confederation's sleek, elegant cruisers, designed for precision warfare and piloted by the galaxy's finest, were being swarmed and torn apart. Their sophisticated energy weapons, while powerful, could only fire in one direction at a time. The Grell simply came from too many angles. The Confederation's military leaders, a collection of long-lived beings from a dozen different worlds, watched the battle from a secure command station on Xylos. Admiral Vor, a bulky, 4-armed being with leathery skin, slammed a fist on the console. "We are losing this war of attrition," he rumbled, his translator humming. "Every ship we build, they counter with 1,000 more drones. We need a new variable." "Our scientists have been researching biological integration," offered a slender avian scientist named Dr. Elara, her feathers ruffled with stress. "But the genetic drift is significant. We cannot adapt our physiology fast enough to match the Grell's single-minded purpose." "Then we don't adapt ourselves," Vor countered, his multifaceted eyes gleaming. "We find a species that is already adaptable, a blank slate. The Confederation's scouts have logged hundreds of primitive worlds. Find me one with a species that fights, that survives, against all odds." The search led them to a blue planet called Earth. They observed from stealth for months, watching grainy footage of a species that seemed to revel in conflict. They saw the great wars, the primitive weapons, the sheer, stubborn refusal to die. But it was a single, isolated incident that sealed their decision. On a frozen continent, a small scientific outpost was caught in a blizzard. One of the humans, a female, had dragged her injured comrades for miles through the ice and wind, refusing to leave them even as her own body began to shut down. The report from the observing drone was clinical. Subject designated Ava exhibited extreme resilience, problem-solving under duress, and a profound protective instinct for her group. Psychological profile suggests high tolerance for trauma and a powerful motivation drive. Recommend acquisition. They didn't ask, they simply arrived. Ava was 24 years old, a field medic and geologist. She remembered the sky ripping open, a feeling of weightlessness, and then a sterile, white room. The beings who took her were not malevolent, but they were utterly alien. They explained their purpose with cold logic. Their civilization was facing extinction. They had studied her species and determined that humans possessed a unique blend of creativity, adaptability, and sheer tenacity. They intended to weaponize it. The process was agonizing. They didn't just graft on weapons, they rewrote her at a fundamental level. They fortified her skeleton with a carbon lattice weave, making her bones virtually unbreakable. They threaded her muscles with synthetic fibers, multiplying her strength 100-fold. They implanted a subdermal energy shield that could deflect plasma fire. They replaced her left eye with a tactical sensor suite, capable of thermal, X-ray, and motion tracking across vast distances. Her right eye remained human, a window to the soul they were hoping to harness. In her right arm, they installed a variable phase plasma cannon, its power core nestled against her heart. In her left, they housed a retractable blade of monomolecular edge, sharp enough to slice through the hull of a Grell drone. They called her the Prime Asset. Ava didn't speak for the first week after the procedures. She lay in her sterile cell, feeling the hum of the power core in her chest, the strange weight of the blade in her arm. She felt less like a soldier and more like a haunted house, a familiar space now occupied by terrifying, inhuman things. The Confederation scientists monitored her, noting her silence, her lack of appetite. They grew worried. Had they broken the spirit they had sought to harness? On the 8th day, Admiral Vor visited her cell. He stood on the other side of a shimmering energy barrier, his 4 arms crossed. You are the product of 1,000 years of scientific advancement, he said, his voice booming. You are our weapon. The Grell are coming. You will be deployed. Ava looked up at him, her human eye narrowing. A weapon, she repeated, her voice raspy from disuse. You think you've made me into a weapon? We have given you might, Vor confirmed. Ava stood up, feeling the incredible power in her legs. She walked to the barrier and placed her human hand against it. It sizzled, but the pain was a distant, manageable thing. You gave me a body of metal and fire, she whispered, her voice suddenly clear. But you left my mind alone. You left my heart alone. You think that's a flaw in your design. You're wrong. That's the whole point. The Grell assault on the Xylos shipyards reached its peak. Thousands of drones, each the size of a small fighter craft, swarmed from the mothership, their objective to cripple the Confederation's ability to produce new warships. The Confederation fleet, what was left of it, formed a defensive perimeter, their energy beams lancing out, but for every drone destroyed, 10 more took its place. It was into this chaos that Ava was deployed. They sent her in a small, one-man insertion pod, little more than a guided missile with a cockpit. As the pod streaked towards the shipyards, she could see the battle unfolding around her. The elegance of the Confederation ships, the sheer mindless hunger of the Grell. She felt a flicker of something, not fear, but a cold, hard clarity. Her pod slammed into the hull of a half-finished dreadnought. The doors hissed open, and she stepped out onto the metal skin of the ship. The void of space was above her, the fiery atmosphere of Xylos below. And crawling towards her across the hull were a dozen Grell drones. They were horrific things, all jagged limbs and dripping mandibles. They moved with a skittering, inhuman speed. Her tactical eye instantly marked them, calculating trajectories, weak points. Her body, her new body, responded without conscious thought. She didn't fire her cannon, not yet. She wanted to feel them. The first drone leaped and she moved. To the Confederation observers watching through her helmet feed, she was a blur. She sidestepped the charge, and with a thought, the monomolecular blade slid from her left arm with a soft snick. She spun, and the blade passed through the drone's central nervous cluster as if it were cutting through soft cheese. It exploded in a shower of ichor and sparking fluids. The other drones paused, a novel behavior. Their simple minds were not programmed for a single target that fought back with such brutal efficiency. Ava didn't give them time to adapt. She was among them. She wasn't fighting a war, she was clearing a room. Her blade was a silver blur, her shielded arm deflected acid sprays, and her augmented legs carried her in impossible arcs. In under 10 seconds, a dozen Grell were nothing but floating debris. On the command station, the bridge crew watched in stunned silence. Admiral Vor's 4 hands gripped his console. The asset is functional, he murmured. Functional was an understatement. Ava moved through the shipyard like a force of nature. She didn't wait for the Grell to come to her, she went to them. She leaped from one half-built ship to another, her plasma cannon roaring, punching holes through entire swarms with a single wide-beam blast. She found a group of Grell attempting to breach a habitat module containing shipyard workers. She didn't just kill them, she annihilated them. She tore through their chitinous bodies with her bare hands, her enhanced strength allowing her to rip limbs from sockets. She became a whirlwind of destruction, a single point of failure in the Grell's relentless tide. But it was when a massive Queen-class Grell, the size of a corvette, detached itself from the mothership to personally deal with this new threat that the true nature of the Confederation's creation was revealed. The Queen was a fortress of organic matter, bristling with weaponized spines and capable of spitting globs of corrosive acid that could melt through starship armor. It zeroed in on Ava, its multitude of eyes fixated on the small figure standing on the hull of a freighter. The Confederation Admiral issued the order. Asset, withdraw. That unit is beyond your capabilities. Fall back to the defensive perimeter. Ava heard the order. She understood the logic. To the Confederation, she was a valuable tool, and a tool should not be risked against an unwinnable foe. But Ava was not a tool. She was a human. She looked at the monstrosity bearing down on her, and in that moment she wasn't on a starship above an alien world. She was back on the frozen continent, dragging her friends through the blizzard. The odds had been impossible then, too. The cold, the distance, the exhaustion. But she hadn't stopped. She couldn't stop. It wasn't in her. "Negative, Command," she said, her voice calm. "I'm engaging." "That is a direct order, Asset," Vor bellowed. Ava switched off her comms. She had a better idea. She didn't charge the Queen. Instead, she ran. She ran along the hull of the freighter, her powerful legs propelling her in great, bounding leaps towards the central nexus of the shipyard. The Queen, enraged, followed, its bulk tearing through the delicate infrastructure of the shipyard, spraying atmosphere and debris in its wake. Ava was leading it on a chase, but it wasn't a random one. Her tactical eye was working, mapping the shipyard's layout, calculating stress points, power flows. She was looking for something specific. She found it in the main reactor of the shipyard, a massive contained fusion core that powered the construction forges. She skidded to a halt on a gantry directly above the reactor's primary magnetic containment bottle. The Queen, having smashed its way through the last barrier, loomed before her, its acid-dripping maw opening wide. Ava looked at the Queen, then down at the pulsing blue-white energy of the reactor below. She looked at her own right arm, the plasma cannon. It was powerful, but a single shot wouldn't even tickle the Queen. But what if she didn't aim at the Queen? "You wanted a weapon," she whispered, a fierce, wild grin spreading across her face. "Let me show you what a weapon really is." She raised her right arm, not at the Queen, but at the gantry beneath her feet. She fired a concentrated, piercing beam. The metal superheated and exploded. The gantry collapsed. Ava dropped like a stone, straight down towards the pulsating heart of the reactor. The Queen, its simple mind focused only on the prey, lunged forward, its massive body plunging into the reactor shaft after her. The moment Ava's feet touched the surface of the magnetic containment bottle, she leaped again, firing her cannon downwards this time, using the recoil to propel herself upwards, past the falling, shrieking Queen. She scrambled, clawing at the walls of the shaft with her augmented fingers, hauling herself out of the reactor pit just as the Queen's bulk slammed into the containment field. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The containment field flickered, destabilized by the massive organic intrusion. The reactor core went into an overload sequence. Ava didn't look back. She ran, pushing her new body to its absolute limit, leaping from the reactor complex just as the world behind her turned to white fire. The explosion ripped through the heart of the shipyard, a colossal bloom of plasma and energy. It wasn't a directed blast. It was a raw, uncontrolled release of stellar power. The shockwave vaporized the Queen instantly. It swept outwards, and the Grell drones, so close to the shipyard, were caught in the expanding cloud of superheated gas and radiation. They didn't stand a chance. They were scoured from existence. The blast wave even reached the distant Grell mothership, buckling its forward sections and sending it reeling back, wounded and confused. On the command station, the bridge was silent. The sensors were a mess of white noise. When they cleared, the Grell swarm was gone. The shipyards were heavily damaged, but the core infrastructure was intact. And a single, tiny life sign was detected, tumbling in the void, protected by a flickering, overstrained energy shield. They recovered her immediately. She was unconscious, her shield depleted, her body battered and bruised. The medical team worked frantically, but the damage was superficial. Her human physiology, bolstered by their own enhancements, had simply endured. Ava awoke in the same sterile room she had started in. But this time, Admiral Vor was standing inside the cell, his 4 arms held in a gesture that, in his culture, denoted profound respect. Behind him stood Dr. Alara and the rest of the High Command. "You disobeyed a direct order," Vor said, his voice devoid of its usual bluster. Ava met his gaze, her human eye clear and unwavering. Yes, I did. You used yourself as bait. You detonated a multi-billion credit fusion reactor. You nearly got yourself killed. Yes. Vor was silent for a long moment. Then he did something no one on his bridge had ever seen. He lowered his massive head in a bow. You were right, he said, his translator humming softly. We gave you might. We thought that was enough. But you brought the annihilation. You brought the strategy, the sacrifice, the human spirit. We have fought the Grell with logic and power for a decade. You fought them with courage and madness. And you won. Ava slowly sat up, wincing at the residual aches. She looked at her hands, one human, one a weapon. She didn't feel like a haunted house anymore. She felt like a home. So what now? She asked. Vor straightened up. The Grell mothership is damaged and in retreat, but it will return. It will always return. We have learned a valuable lesson today. We do not need a better weapon. We need more humans. He gestured to the view screen on the wall, which flickered to life, showing a star map. A single blue-green planet was highlighted. We would like to propose an alliance, not with a Confederation asset, but with the people of Earth. We will share our technology, our knowledge. In return, we ask for what you just showed us, your unique perspective. Ava looked at the image of her homeworld, a tiny, beautiful marble in the vast, dark ocean of space. She thought of the frozen continent, the blizzard, her friends. She thought of the Queen, the reactor, the insane gamble she had taken. She thought of the fear in the Confederation's eyes, not of her power, but of her willingness to use it. She smiled. It was a small, tired, but genuine smile. I think, she said, they might be interested in a conversation.